wondering what kind of being Omolara had married to. Once upon a time, in the Oshun village, there lived a young lady called Omolara. Omolara was a very kind and gentle young lady. Her father was a very poor farmer, and her mother a blind basket weaver. And to top it up, Omolara was not good looking. In fact, she was infamous in the village as the ugliest girl there. She was always by herself, as no one wanted to be associated as a friend of the ugliest girl, especially not the young and beautiful maidens of the village. Sometimes, Omolara would come home crying after being bullied by Bimbo, the most beautiful girl and the daughter of one of the wealthiest merchants in the village, and her clique. Omolara tried as much as possible to avoid Bimbo and her clique, even as far as going to the stream at night instead of the daytime just to avoid them. But still, they made it their daily mission to seek her out. Even though Omolara was of marriageable age, no man was interested in marrying her, as she was neither pleasant to look at, nor was she from a wealthy home. In fact, the villagers looked upon her family with pity, and some with disdain. Some believed they were unfortunate, while others felt they were being cursed. Omolara's mother would always advise and console her, telling her that their current situation would not be permanent. Her mother would often tell her that true beauty was not in physical appearance, but by character, and this. Her mother firmly believed that their situation would soon change, even though Omolara and her father could not see how. She would always encourage Omolara to not relent and be kind to all, even if they are not kind to her. One day, Omolara had finished her house chores and helping out their mother to weave some baskets, so she could take to the market herself. Omolara noticed that the water she had fetched the previous night had somehow poured out. She knew she could not leave to the market, leaving the house without water. But she also did not want to go to the stream in fear of meeting Bimbo and her clique. Omolara decided to find a way to sneakily fetch the water without running into them. And if she couldn't, she would just ignore their taunts and jabs. After all, this was not the first time they were mocking her. And she was somewhat used to it, though she preferred not hearing those words, as it often made her feel sad about her looks and family situation. On getting to the stream, Omolara hid in the bushes as she noticed Bimbo and her cliques having fun at the stream. She waited and waited, but noticed that they weren't leaving anytime soon, and it was already getting late. But she had yet to go to sell the woven basket at the market. Feeling impatient, she decided to reveal herself and just fetch the water, in spite of their presence. But that day, Bimbo was not just satisfied with taunting her as usual. Bimbo and her cliques blocked Omolara's path out of the stream. They encircled her, each taunting and pushing her around. Omolara tried as much as she might to get past them, but was unsuccessful. She pleaded with Bimbo to just let her go, to which Bimbo asked Omolara to go on her knees and apologize for coming to the stream and trying to infect the other maidens with her misfortunes. With tears in her eyes and a pot of water on her head, Omolara agreed to Bimbo's request and knelt before Bimbo to apologize. She asked them to forgive for trying to spread her and her family's misfortunes to them. This seemed to appease Bimbo and her clique. As Bimbo made way for Omolara to pass, Omolara cleaned her tears thanking Bimbo and her clique for their benevolence. She quickly stood up. Just as she passed by Bimbo, a leg shot out on Omolara's path and she fell, breaking the pot of water she carried and scraping her knees on a stone. The girls busted out laughing and mocking her. Omolara looked at them, holding back tears. She wondered why life was so harsh to her. As they laughed and taunted her, there was suddenly a very loud bleating coming from the bushes. The girls went silent, everyone wondering where the sound came from. It sounded eerily like a human crying, even though it was clearly an animal bleating. Though afraid, they decided to investigate and find out what was making such loud noises. The girls searched the bushes with Omolara behind them. She couldn't contain her curiosity. The girls' search came to a stop when they traced the sound to an antelope lying on the grasses under a tree. Bimbo hissed on seeing the animal. She commented that aloud, asking the antelope why it was causing a ruckus and making such loud, unpleasant noises. Wasting no time, Bimbo and her clique walked away from the animal. As they left, Omolara inched closer to the majestic-looking antelope, wondering why it was letting out such disturbing noise and why it lay under the tree. She soon discovered it was fatally injured. An arrow lodged close to his heart as blood oozed out. Looking at the antelope, she felt pity and knew she couldn't leave it there to die like that. And so she quickly ran to the bushes looking for the village miracle plant used in treating all sorts of illness and injuries. When she found it, using a stone, she crushed it into a paste and tried to rush back to the antelope, even though she was limping from her fall. On getting to the antelope, she noticed it looked weaker than it had been before she left. The majestic antelope regarded her skepticism as she came closer to apply the crushed miracle plant on its wounds. "I'm not here to hurt you. Let me help you treat your wound," she spoke to the animal. She noticed it relaxed a bit after her words. There, she tried as gently as she could to remove the arrow. As its cries got louder, then she applied the miracle plant paste around its wound. Through her treatment, the bleeding stopped and the animal seemed relieved of pain. By the time Omolara looked up, she noticed the sun had gone down and the moon sat high up in the sky. She had been carried away with treating its injury. She hadn't noticed that it was night already. Knowing her parents would be sick with worry, Omolara rushed back home. At home, her father stood outside, looking worried and anxious. His face brightened up on seeing her and rushed to meet her halfway to the house. He noticed she was limping and asked her what happened to her. Omolara narrated the day's ordeal, from her encounter with Bimbo to the majestic antelope. Her father, visibly saddened by the ordeal his daughter goes through at the hands of these girls, apologized to her for not being rich or powerful enough. Omolara pleaded with him not to feel that way or speak in such manner as they walked back into the house. The same story was narrated to Omolara's mother, who sighed. She then encouraged her family. Though she praised Omolara for treating the wounded animal, she berated her for forgetting to tend to her own wounds and asked her to be careful next time. Omolara's mother tended to her injuries. They ate dinner and went to sleep. The next day, Omolara got up very early in the morning before the sun was even out. As she stepped out of the house, she met her father sitting outside with a basket of vegetables. Before she could ask what he was doing, he replied her, saying he knew she was going to see the antelope. and that he would accompany her to make sure she doesn't encounter any issues since it was still dark. And so Omolara and father went to where she had seen the antelope the previous day. She and her dad tended to his wounds. Then her father dropped the vegetables in his basket for the antelope to eat. Omolara was glad, seeing that she herself hadn't thought of bringing the majestic antelope something to eat. This continued for 5 more days. Omolara and her father would go early in the morning to care for the antelope, then head out for their daily activities. On the 6th day, they arrived to find the antelope gone and hoped that it had left healed and not killed by a hunter. 2 weeks after the antelope had left, it was announced that Bimbo was getting married to the prince of her village. Happy for Bimbo, Omolara hoped her marriage would take Bimbo's attention from her, which wasn't the case. In fact, it grew worse. Now a princess, Bimbo would order Omolara to come to the palace to carry out all sorts of tedious tasks, often telling Omolara it was due to since the kingdom housed her and her unfortunate family. 3 months after Bimbo's marriage, she took in but suffered a terrible miscarriage that left her bedridden for weeks. Heavy rain fell and caused major destruction of property and majority of the farmlands in the village. Bimbo's family farmlands included. Her husband, the prince of Oshun village, came home one afternoon with a terrible wound on his leg that led to it being amputated. Everyone wondered why such misfortune has befallen them. The villagers struggled to recover back from their misfortunes. A wealthy, handsome and young merchant called Akin moved into their village. Everyone was intrigued by his looks, wealth, and where he had come from. A lot of families hoped that their daughters would catch his eyes and he would ask for their hands. He was the talk of the town. Even though Bimbo was married, she wished also that she could marry this handsome and extremely wealthy man. The merchant Akin, to the shock of the entire village, made his intentions to marry Omolara. Knowing that her family and the whole village has tried to dissuade him, but his mind was made up. He showered Omolara and her family with wealth and gifts of all sorts to the envy of the village. Omolara had initially rejected his advances and proposals, even though he was handsome and rich. She didn't just want to marry the stranger just because he was wealthy. She longed to also marry for love. But the merchant was relentless in his pursuit for Omolara. He treated her and her family with such love and care. He became her first friend. He never seemed to look down on them and their misfortunes. But she knew it. Omolara agreed to love the merchant and accepted his proposals. He continuously showered her and her family with wealth and love, elevating their status from poor to somewhat rich, much to the annoyance of some of the villagers, especially Bimbo and her family. After Omolara's marriage to the handsome, kind, wealthy and mysterious merchant, they moved into the mansion he had built. His home rivaled that of the palace. The village marveled how Omolara's family misfortunes could turn so suddenly. This was especially a mystery to Bimbo. One day, Bimbo, now a princess, sent guards to arrest Omolara and her family, accusing them of witchcraft. She accused that Omolara and her family had cast a dark curse on the village out of spite. She argued that it was particularly odd that Omolara's family farmland was among the few not destroyed, and somehow a strange merchant had appeared from nowhere and chosen to marry Omolara amongst all the beautiful maidens in the village. Most of the villagers agreed with her reasoning, and they cried for justice, and that Omolara and her family be thrown into the evil forest to be eaten by the wild beasts there. Omolara and her family strongly denied the accusations. The king then asked that the chief priestess be brought in to reveal if it was true or not. The chief priestess then inquired of the gods, asking them to reveal the truth and expose Omolara and her family of this dark magic. But the gods revealed something astounding. The chief priestess was shocked. She then revealed that the man Omolara had married was no ordinary man. In fact, he wasn't human. Hearing this, everyone moved away from Omolara and her husband, murmuring, wondering what kind of being Omolara had married to. In a shocking turn of events, the priestess then revealed that the misfortunes that befell the village was as a result of Bimbo's actions and that of her husband. Everyone looked confused, especially Bimbo and the prince. They both denied the words of the priestess. The king, confused by the happenings, asked the priestess to elaborate on what she had revealed. The priestess then explained that the merchant was the spirit of the forest, and while going out on his daily duties, he had transformed to an antelope and was haunted by the prince, who shot an arrow at him, almost killing him. There was a loud gasp. Everyone looked to the rich merchant in awe and surprise. Omolara looked at him, shocked that the man she had married, who had brought such joy and love into her family, was the same antelope she had cared for in the bushes some months ago. The priestess then continued to explain that the prince's action had brought down the misfortunes on the village, and that Bimbo's miscarriage was as a result of her bullying of Omolara. The whole village square fell silent. Omolara, dazed by all she had heard, not sure how to feel about it all, asked Akin the merchant, her husband, why he had come into the village and seeked her and her family out. He replied her, telling her that he wanted to repay her and her family for their kindness towards him. He also revealed that he had initially wanted to destroy the village as payback for what the prince had done to him. But after Omolara had nursed him, he fell in love with her and decided against it. He knew she was being treated badly by the entire village and was being discriminated against. That's why he decided to punish them, and to repay her and her family, he married her to bring joy, love and care into her life and that of her family as a payback for their kindness. Hearing these words, the villagers, including Bimbo and the royal family, fell to their knees begging for forgiveness from Akin and Omolara's family. Akin, the forest spirit, forgave them as long as the discriminatory attacks towards Omolara and her family stopped, and antelope hunting was banned in the village. The villagers accepted his conditions. Omolara went on to live happy with Akin, the forest spirit. They went on to have 2 children. The villagers stopped their discriminating actions against those who were misfortuned and even went out of their way to help them. Prosperity was restored to the village, and hunting of antelope was banned. Thank you so much for tuning into Bejen's Folktales. Please don't forget to subscribe, like and comment for more folktale stories.